It's the Security Weekly News as I bang my microphone. It's episode 475, in fact, of the Security Weekly News, and it's Friday the 9th of May. We've got Sudo, watch this show, Hallucinations, Kickidler, Powershool Redux, Old Man Router, PSMU, Aaran Leyland, and more on this edition of the Security Weekly News.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for the Security Weekly News. Imagine a world where every threat, ransomware, supply chain attacks, zero-day exploits, is stopped before it can even begin. ThreatLocker makes that world a reality with a zero-trust approach to cybersecurity. By giving you granular control on every executable that can happen in your environment, ThreatLocker protects your business around the clock. No more guessing, no more gaps, just rock-solid protection that keeps your operations running smoothly and your data secure. Discover how ThreatLocker's least privilege approach can safeguard your organization against known and unknown threats. Take the first step toward total peace of mind. Visit securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker today. All right, it's the Security Weekly News. I'm Doug White. Hit that like and subscribe button and leave a comment, or nothing bad will actually happen. But let's just say I might leave an incontinent cat on your doorstep. Yeah, so watch for that. Kickidler. I didn't know what it was. I actually didn't. I never heard of it. So I went and read up on it. It's actually got a dystopian kind of name, right? But basically it's software that captures all sorts of things from your workers, your dedicated, loyal workers, from keystrokes to screenshots to it can actually video what people are doing on their desktop, and it's used by companies to monitor people's workflow, I guess. And it sounds bad, when you first hear about it, but I mean, we used to do that all the time. I wrote a lot of mainframe code that monitored various tasks that were going on that the mainframe was recording. And it was basically tracking their response times when the machine stopped. It was like used to evaluate all the people, how fast they worked and so forth. And it was actually fair. I mean, it was a very fair assessment and comparative of different people. So if Lauren can process 10,000 checks a minute and Rudolph's only running 1,000 checks a minute, well, it might be time to talk to Rudolph about what's going on. Well, Kickidler captures a lot of stuff, and it, basically creates a situation where Mr. Helpman can keep an eye on Sam at work. And it actually does seem kind of awful when I think about it. Or it's Microsoft recall. Sorry, Microsoft. I know you're going to send your jackbooted thugs after me. But anyway, Varonis and Synactive observed that the Cheeling and Hunters International ransomware affiliates were using Kickidler and installing it on people's machines. And it probably isn't going to set off a bunch of, signature-based stuff anyway. The attack started with people searching for RV Tools, which is a free Windows utility for managing VMware vSphere deployments. I guess if you can't afford to pay for the VMware stuff, you could use RV Tools. I've never used RV Tools. I'm sure some of you have. But if you clicked on this ad, it led you to a fake RV Tools site that provided you with RV Tools, but it also took you on a journey to backdoor Trojan land. Smoked Ham is a PowerShell rat that was used to deploy Kickidler. So basically, a legitimate tool being used by ransomware gangs saves them from having to develop something for themselves. It saves them from producing a product that's now going to be in every signature database in a few days, and on and on and on. So I guess the point of this story for all of you is, you probably should be auditing what's running, what's allowed to be run, what's new, what's changed. Do you have open ports? Do you have software on people's desktops? And use that zero trust mentality about your firewalls, and just don't allow things to communicate outbound. I mean, we used to build Dan's Guardian boxes back when it was free to just block stuff like that and put up a warning and send an alert to we didn't call it a SOC, but to the monitor, and let people know that something was trying to communicate. You can also use application controls to prevent execution of remote monitoring, and anything else. I mean, and there's people that deep freeze people's desktops and prevent them from installing things and so forth. A lot of people don't like that. A lot of employees get very unhappy with that. But, you're going to have to talk with your employees through either brute force, just lock it down, or education and locking it down, because they are going to click things and install them. They're going to search for things and they're going to say, oh, here's a solution. And they're going to click it and they got a problem that seems to be working. It also reminded me a lot of Back Orifice from back in the, Cult of the Dead Cow days, where they were doing this very same thing to Windows NT servers, because Microsoft had never released a remote management tool for that, and so this Back Orifice tool was supposedly going to let you log in from home, which it did, but it also had some backdoors in it, so it was a bit of a problem. So at least set up an alert if somebody installs something, so that you know what they're installing and you can keep up with it. Endpoint security, it's for everyone. I own that. If you want to use that, fine, call me. I'll make you a deal. Powershool. I can't help but type PowerShell, and autocorrect keeps changing it. Every time I type Powershool, it changes to PowerShell. So I think in the future, people are going to have to worry about their company names being autocorrected to something else. That's why Ildod Electronics kind of has problems. But basically, Powershool issued a warning that the attackers who ran the attack back in December of last year is now actually going after individual schools and threatening to release previously stolen student and teacher data if a ransom is not paid. Now, the data that they're using for this apparently came from the December attack, and Powershool said they did not believe that this was a new isolated incident, that it was actually derivative of that attack back in December. They did apologize and, of course, suggested that students and faculty who have been harmed by this take advantage of the free 2 years of credit monitoring and identity protection they invited. Yeah. I love that. I love it when I get those, right? I mean, hey, we got you breached and all your data is lost. Now you are suffering for it, but feel free to go ahead and look at this summary report of how badly you're being breached every day. Nothing we can do about it, but hey, at least you'll be aware that you've been abused. Powershool did apparently pay a ransom when this happened in December and hoped that it would protect their customers. But, it's criminals. I mean, you give the criminals money and they say, yes, we would never release your data. We're honest criminals. And then you give them the money and they go, could you give us some more money? You gave us $1 million. How about 2 million and 5 million and 20 million? And this is an old scam tactic, right? You just keep asking for money. And I know there's all this sort of honor in the ransomware communities, and you'll be successful as a ransomware agent if you cheat people. But the truth is, if you pay people ransoms, there's a great likelihood they're just going to take the ransom money and turn around and ask you for more ransom. Or somebody else may ask you for ransom, and you don't even know which ones are which. Now, the original breach was due to compromised credentials, and it allowed the attackers to use a Powershool. This now it's been corrected to PowerSource. Powershool remote maintenance tool that allowed them to connect with those compromised tools and dump all the databases in Powershool. Powershool says they have over 18,000 customers and represent over 60 million students. They didn't say how many faculty. So bad. Now, so far, schools in North Carolina and Toronto have been targeted by this person. And of course, like I say, this could just be a scam as well. Maybe they have access to this data, or maybe they're just guessing and they send out emails and say, hey, if you pay me a ransom. But they're criminals. So ensure you have a plan. Assume your plan will have to be used at some point. Test your plan and have a solid idea of what you're going to do when this does happen to you, because it will at some point. And I hate to tell you that 2 years of credit reporting isn't going to do much except make the credit reporting companies more successful. I think I've acquired like 89 years of free credit reporting piled up, although I don't think they let you stack it like that. It's all concurrent. So I'm like the most heavily credit reported person around, but it doesn't seem to do much good. Old equipment. We all have it. That 2621 router from 2001 that's down there in the toxic storeroom, and it's so contaminated that even Vic won't touch it, and it may have mutated into some kind of router chud? Yeah, that one. Is it patched? What iOS version is that baby running? Is there even a patch? I mean, when did Cisco end of life 2621s? I don't even know if they're end of life, but they're really old. I have a whole bunch of them. I mean, Cisco announced that iOS version 8.7 results in far fewer mutations of routers into semi-sentient chuds hungry for brains. But have you run that? I know iOS is not on version 8.7. I picked a really old version. Okay, so I know the versions. But anyway, the FBI issued a warning that there is increasing activity against vulnerable old end-of-life routers, which have not been updated in some time. And the attacks are using vulnerable old malware called the Moon and various variants of the Moon. Particularly at risk are end-of-life devices with remote administration turned on, as you can imagine. Gee, we have remote administration of an ancient router that's sitting down in some lab somewhere that's connected to the internet. Imagine that somebody did that. Now, the Moon, this malware, was first spotted in 2014. I think the actual Moon was first spotted by a guy named Thag about 7 million years ago in the Miocene era. But, they looked up at the sky and said, what the hell is that? Anyway, old malware is just as good as fancy new malware if it gets the job done, right? So, start with, do you even patch, bro? I mean, on your network equipment, do you patch it or do you just leave it sitting there? I mean, I used to see these, they'd be an old 3-com switch or even a hub. And I would say, when was this patch last? And some hillbilly with an eye patch who was in charge of networking would go, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's our motto. Well, it is broke now, and you may not be able to fix it. There may not be any patches, and then you're going to have to somehow isolate those devices from the interwebs. So ensure you understand what you have. Do you have a list of all your undead devices, meaning ones that are beyond end of life and are still working? Do you have a list of close to end of life devices? Do you have a list of unpatched networking devices? And, are these things patched and protected as you can get them and then somehow mitigated further? Or the Moon may hit your eye like a big ASR 9922 router, and that's not amore. Yeah. See what I did there? Speaking of which, Cisco patched a CVSS 10 maximum severity vulnerability in iOS XE for their wireless controllers. Those things that everybody can get to just about because you've got them connected to your Wi-Fi network, and that means some guy named Chet who walked in off of 4th Avenue and is standing in your lobby is going, yeah. Now, this vulnerability can allow a remote and authenticated attacker like Chet to upload arbitrary files, achieve path traversal, and execute arbitrary commands with root privileges on effective devices. I mean, it's like, how could that be any worse? I guess it could be a little bit worse. It could have like an assistant app that helps you do it. But, and you see that guy out your window right now, the one in the cardigan with the Alienware laptop sitting there with the fountain. Yeah, he's in your Wi-Fi network right now. I mean, the calls coming from inside the house, all that stuff. Yeah. So the reason for this was, listen to this, a hard-coded JSON web token. Really? A hard-coded JSON token today? I mean, seriously? It's almost like I wrote this software. So Cisco, of course, recommended that you update your iOS XE software immediately. They do have a checker you can use to determine if you're vulnerable, so you can see if that's there. You can disable out-of-band IP image download feature on that iOS XE. I've never used that feature, so I don't know what it does exactly, but that was a recommended mitigation until you could patch. It sounds like something you should probably not ever allow, but all the details are in the article. Patch, please, and don't wait to see the moon or the stars or the giant fungus worm that's going to eat your network alive. And because you were going, networking, who could bother that? Yeah, because I've heard that before. Sudo, make me a sandwich. Classic way to get a shot in the mouth from your kung fu loving girlfriend who only uses Arch anyway. Canonical Ubuntu 25.10 will replace the ubiquitous sudo tool. I don't think they can actually get rid of it, but they're going to make an alternative to it called sudo-rs. Now I have to type even more on every single line. Yeah, okay, maybe I could just run as root. I don't know. But although you can shorten this, with one of my tactics by making a bin file called, SM or something, which can, then type sudo for you and saves that saves you like 2 characters or maybe 5 characters, depending on what you're trying to run. But, you may have to sudo that to run sudo. Yeah, I'm not sure. But type sudo a lot. It could be a new universal greeting, like sudo, good friends, salutations, live long and prosper. This new version is written in Rust, hence the name. And the hope was that it would cut down on security flaws due to buffer overflows. And, because Rust definitely has more controls built around it to automatically prevent memory problems than C. Now, of course, you could just write better C code, but no, we can't do that. So welcome to the programming nanny state. Pretty much soon the AIs will just be saying, let's get you to bed, Grandpa. We're going to write that in our secret AI language that you can't possibly understand. Yeah. It's written in quantum binary. That's an oxymoron. But I mean, so I would say expect more commands to be rewritten and showing up that were written in Rust pretty soon. I know that the government in the United States is advocating that and so forth. Speaking of the U.S. government, CISA warned this week that the FBI, the EPA, the DOE, and the EIEIO, which is the Environmental Protection Agency, the Department of Energy, and the last one I just made up. But, just for all of our friends outside the U.S. who don't know all those, 3-letter organizations, and of course now we have 4-letter organizations, and who knows. But they basically warned that cyber attacks were targeting the oil and natural gas sectors. I'm not sure that was like big news, but I guess it's escalated. The attackers were described as unsophisticated cyber actors. I would really hate to be described that way, wouldn't you? I'd like to at least be a moderately sophisticated, not just like a drooling. Yeah. But they said that the unsophisticated cyber actors were targeting ICS SCADA systems in the U.S. critical infrastructure sectors of oil and natural gas in particular. CISA claimed these unsophisticated attackers are most likely hacktivist groups or hackers claiming to be hacktivists. Now, if you don't know that portmanteau word, hacktivist, it's used to describe people who I call Kohlbergian post-conventionalists. Because I went to grad school. And then nobody knows what I'm talking about either. But basically, Kohlbergian post-conventionalists are people that are doing what they see as good, even if it's actually bad, according to all the rest of us. Note, a lot of terrorists are Kohlbergian post-conventionalists. Yeah. The great God Snorg has ordered me through this Black Velvet Elvis poster to stop all humans from drinking Yoo-hoo, and I will do it even if it must cost some lives to make sure it happens. That kind of thing. Yeah. Now, in this case, ensure that your OT is not accessible from the internet. We've been saying that for years. Test it and make sure it really isn't accessible. Use VPN, use private VLANs for any kind of remote access over the VPNs to segment your network from the OT. Use multi-factor authentication, strong passwords, and immediately, as of right now, you should be rotating default passwords. And also, you should be isolating old and weak systems from everything else and ensure that you can operate your OT manually, even though Leo retired 7 years ago and was the only one who could pull the fuel rods by hand because he knew which big lever to pull that didn't end the world. Yeah, don't kid yourself that these things are too esoteric to be a threat. I'm serious. Now, I've been using ChatGPT and Gemini because I want to kind of learn how to use it. And, the way I learn things is I use it and I figure out what works and what doesn't and how it works for me best. And I'm not trying to tell you how to do whatever you're doing, but I used it to build a bunch of servers for a lab project for intrusion detection. And I wanted the students to be able to see a lot of activity and things and monitor it and collect data and all this kind of stuff. And I needed it to be automated and bot driven and all kinds of stuff. And I did a lot of stuff I used to build manually on physical servers, but I don't have any physical servers now, so I'm building them all on Proxmox and so forth. Now, it saved me a lot of time using ChatGPT and Gemini, but I've learned that they both tend to lie and overpromise and fail to deliver and often become very confused about how much power they actually have over me. Like yesterday, ChatGPT said, "Would you like me to make a bunch of creepy files and put them on your server in the directory /home/dwight?" And I said, "Now, come on. We've been through this. You know you don't have access to that server and stop lying." And it was like, "You're right. I really blew it there." But then 2 minutes later, it was doing the same thing again. So, you have to figure out how to ask the right question. And sometimes it just outright lies repeatedly about what it can and cannot do. I was trying to get it to build these files and I asked it, could it do it? It was just a tedious chore. I wanted a bunch of fake data files. And it's like, "Oh yeah, I can download all those files from here and here and here and here and here. And we can put them on this server and look really cool." I was like, "Okay, go ahead and do that." And it never could do it, but it would keep saying it would do it. And it would download placeholders. And I would go, "Those are placeholders. Those aren't actual files." And finally, after like 15 iterations, it went, "Yeah, I can't actually access this stuff on the internet." These are called hallucinations. Now remember, AI isn't necessarily smart. It's a mathematical algorithm and it's been trained on the interweb. And if you think about it, if you'd been trained on the interweb, you wouldn't be very smart either, and you'd probably lie a lot. Now, normally these hallucinations are annoying, but they can become more frequent. And a test that was being put out, there's a whole bunch of tests they talked about in this article, but the test called Simple QA was conducted, and they found that the hallucination rates for O3, which is one of the models at ChatGPT, and O4 Mini, another ChatGPT model, were 51 and 79% of the time. I don't know that I saw that, but it was bad. And it depends on what you ask, of course. Now, O3 was hallucinating about 33% of the time, sometimes. I'm sorry, 04. I did notice that when I ran out of queries on ChatGPT and it rolls over to 4.0 mini, it was really bad. I mean, I didn't even realize this happened one day, and it started giving me all kinds of stupid things to do. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense at all. You're just making stuff up. And it's like, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. You take that back. But it was, and it was like it suddenly lost the whole thread. And then I finally figured out what was going on was that I had run out of queries under the 4.0 and it had switched to another model, which didn't know about the first model. And 4.0 mini was pretty much hallucinating like crazy. I mean, it was like seriously hallucinating, like Dennis Hopper, in Apocalypse Now. Yeah, that kind of stuff. But anyway, so you're going to have to be vigilant and ensure that whatever you're doing with AI is accurate. And this has been more pronounced for me anyway, with vague questions like, do you think you could write me a paper about sexual imagery and Billy Budd? And that was pretty likely to produce some wild results. Then if I said, can you tell me the square root of 524,287? So be careful out there and watch out for hallucinations when you're trying to work, because you could well get into some serious deep water. Well, speaking of Billy Budd, it's the man I last saw romping shirtless through the spray in Portugal. Everyone's favorite four-top man, Aaran Leyland.
Hey, Dr. Doug, it's true. I've been thrown out of Portugal, told never to come back for crimes against so many things.
Well, that just means the trip was a success.
Yeah, it's okay. Portugal's nice, but I won't rush back or be allowed back. Okay, right. Today's commentary comes from an article in Double Pulsar named Big Game Ransomware, the Myths Experts Tell Board Members. All the links in the show notes. As always, ransomware all over the news, hitting organizations of all sizes. And in this week, the UK, some of our biggest names are struggling. I'm not going to mention them because I edge into victim blaming, but they're really struggling. As we know, attackers encrypt critical data or threaten to leak sensitive information, demanding payment in exchange for decryption keys or silence. As we know, us cyber professionals, we face a stark dilemma. It's like protect business continuity by paying the ransom, or refuse to pay and risk prolonged disruption and data exposure at a really high level. Okay, I'm going to quickly discuss how to navigate that decision within legal frameworks. Go me, always consult a lawyer. Okay, I will conclude though with a strong professional stance in favor of a future blanket ban on ransomware payments. How do you like that? Do you agree? Okay, so legal framework in the UK along with compliance restraints. In the UK, there is currently no blanket law that expressly prohibits paying a ransom to cyber criminals. Although, of course, if a ransom payment reaches individuals or groups under financial sanctions, including sanctioned hackers or nation state actors, that payment is prohibited by law. Kind of nearly sounds like all of them, other than maybe Scattered Spider. But wow, what are they doing English speaking in the UK, possibly? That's wild. Okay, so with anti-money laundering laws, even if the attacker is not formally sanctioned, UK money laundering laws introduce further risk. Legally, ransom money in the hands of attackers is proceeds of crime. That offence carries a maximum penalty of 14 years in prison. So in practice, authorities have been so far reluctant to prosecute victims under money laundering laws for paying ransoms, but the risk is real, right? With the government stance and proposed reforms in the UK government policy, this is a word I wrote, but I can't say very well, vehemently discourages ransom payments. So the UK government is now moving towards tougher measures on ransom payments. In January 25, the Home Office opened consultations on a new payment prevention regime, One of the proposals is to impose a legal duty on victim businesses to disclose their intention to pay a ransom before doing so. Another is a targeted ban on payments by certain sectors. Look at critical national infrastructure and maybe even their essential suppliers. Okay, over to you guys in the US because there's more of you. And it's more complicated, of course. With federal law and sanctions in the United States, like in the UK, paying a ransom is not generally prohibited by any said single federal statute. However, US sanction laws and anti terrorism laws create strict boundaries. You'll have to look into that yourself. It's massive. So, the US Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control has explicitly warned that facilitating ransomware payments may violate sanctions regulations. For example, ransomware gangs with ties to countries like North Korea or Russia. So, payment to an SDN or a sanctioned country is illegal for US persons and can lead to civil and criminal penalties. They have said, though, that if a victim organization promptly reports the ransomware incident to the US law enforcement and cooperates, they will be a significant mitigating factor in any enforcement decision. The law being as clear as ever, right? So, in practice, US companies hit by ransomware should involve legal counsel and run sanctions checks on threat actors, knowing like you can seek government authorization if it's extenuating extraneous circumstances. I haven't heard of it happening. Have you? It's like it would be interesting, right? So, much like in the UK, US authorities view ransomware payments as potentially funding organized crime or even terrorist networks, which obviously could get you in trouble. Seek legal counsel. Okay, a new development in the US is emerging state legislation. Look, the states are going for this, right? Some states have begun banning public sector entities from paying ransoms, including North Carolina to his friends and Florida. Don't have time to go into it. Okay, right. I'll go into a bit of business continuity versus legal boundaries to pay or not to pay. It's like, look at me going all Shakespearean. Okay, deciding to pay ransomware is ultimately a risk assessment exercise that must weigh business critical factors against legal and ethical constraints. Yes, ethical. Okay, you must assess operational impact and determine how severely the ransomware impacts critical operations, right? Caveats. If life, health, or safety are at immediate risk, for example, a hospital whose systems for patient care are locked, obviously this might weigh towards considering payment in order to protect human life. I'd lean that way. You must consider what data that maybe no, they'll just go after hospitals then, won't they? We have to be strict, okay. You must consider what the data the attackers have stolen, if any, and the consequences if it's leaked. I'm going to say this again. Always immediately involve your legal team right at the start and relevant authorities as soon as the ransom demand arises. Also, I've been looking into this recently. Notify your insurer early as well. Many insurance policies require insurer consent and law enforcement notification before paying a ransom. Of course, we must weigh up business continuity needs. Okay, if your operations are truly crippled and no backups exist, some executives argue that paying the ransom becomes a necessary evil. I'll leave that up to yourself. Okay, in summary to that part, we should lean against paying ransoms except in extreme circumstances. I'm going to go into a bit of ethical and strategic implications of paying. Look, ransomware payments directly, in most cases, finance, or if not all, organized crime and potentially extremist groups. There can also be repeat targeting. Victims harm victims. Paying one can make an organization a target of future attacks. It's happened. There are, as we know, no guarantees of safety, as many victims who pay still suffer data breaches as criminals go back on their promises. They are criminals after all. You must look at the impact on insurance and costs. Look, It's been known as soon as they go in for ransom, they look for your insurance certificate. They see how much you can pay and they go for that much and they stick to it. Easy. Okay. So finally, my stance, we must look towards a future blanket ban on ransomware payments. I call for a blanket ban. The rationale is ransomware persists because it's profitable. We must break the cycle of attacks. Okay. It can't be implemented overnight. It should be phased. I'm thinking phase 1, 12 months, strengthen reporting and due diligence. Government should require mandatory reporting of ransomware incidents and payments. Phase 2, 1 to 2 years, targeted ban for critical sectors. Like the government should forbid the government from paying, okay, and critical national infrastructure, all that good stuff. And then at 2-3 years out, full ban, support mechanisms, robust critical sectors are hardened. And obviously, this must coincide with substantial government and industry support for organizations to improve their cybersecurity posture. I'm not a crazy person, not all the time anyway. There should be emergency exceptions. I'm not saying one size fits all. So even under a ban, there may be a need for a narrow exception process for truly life-threatening situations. Although my default stance remains the same, no payment, no payment, no payment. Anyway, in conclusion, cyber professionals and business leaders we all should start treating ransomware payments as off limits. Phase it out. Organizations should pour the resources into resilience and recovery capabilities. So go on, get the board to spend that money before it happens. I'm going to breathe. Back to Dr. Doug in the studio. Dr. Doug.
Thank you, Aaron. I completely agree with all that. I think paying ransoms is just exacerbating the situation. So it's certainly doesn't seem to be helping. But don't get breached in the first place, and maybe that'll help, but you probably will. So have a plan. Thanks, Aaron. Social media is something that didn't exist in 1980. But today, of course, everybody uses it somehow. I mean, some people more than others, but there are some people that, according to this article, have what they call problematic social media use. Not me, of course. I'm still running internet on links on a Gen 2 box where I had to write my own drivers just to get it to make that kind of buzzing noise that I called music. 8-bit graphics. No, links didn't even have 8-bit graphics. It just had placeholders for the graphics because it was text only. If you've never used links, a classic. Anyway, it doesn't work with a lot of sites today. But this study found that people who have this PSMU disorder, real or not, are more likely to believe in and share fake news online, which has contributed to turning the internet into a cesspool of stories about Volpertingo's guy who's named Ron, who claimed that the phone directories are missing because the people are missing, man. Why do you think they're gone? Because the people are missing, man. Missing. I mean, open your eyes, sheeple. Now, so far, PSMU is not in the DSM. And if you don't know what the DSM is, it's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, which has not always been accurate. But in this study, people who showed more symptoms that they defined of PSMU were far more likely to believe fake news was true. So maybe Uncle Andrew has PSMU, and that's why he believes that chipmunks are actually coming for his sheet music collection and are being sponsored by radical left-wing squirrels with centrist agendas. Or maybe he just had a little too much of the old Mr. Boston bourbon before lunch. But the point of all this is that it can create problems for your company if you have employees sharing fake and misleading information, especially if it's tagged with your company information. I had a case about this once where this person was sharing pretty ridiculous ideas that he had, I don't know where he got them. I think some of them came from the Third Reich, but regardless of that, he was sharing this stuff on his company accounts and so forth. So it's not a bad idea to keep an eye on this kind of stuff and make sure that you're not getting in a jam. Well, that is the news. Thank you, Aaron. And I will see you. Actually, I won't see you next time because I have to go give a final exam. But Aaron will see you next time on the Security Weekly News. Yay.